Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack here at the IrishHotspur, bringing you the next edition of the podcast. We're being very good this time. We've done it where we're able to do two podcasts in 2 weeks. We're able to put the second one out here, and we're bringing back at somebody who we haven't had a while on these live shows, and it is the Joracle. And with these sort of podcasts, it's basically just sort of a Spurs therapy session, if you will. So I thought maybe a guy like Jorri, who a lot of people do enjoy from the likes of Weird Tom TV, maybe he'd be a good guy to have a nice chat with us with plenty of things. So, Jorri, I mean, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been all right. Spurs been only one game a week, so it's only that one traumatic event a week. So yeah.
They're testing you less. They're testing your
Exactly.
emotions less.
Yeah.
Dave is recovering from an illness at the moment, but he's still powering on and keeping strong. And we're deciding to put him into the 11 here for the podcast to make it a front three. Dave, we appreciate your efforts. And how are you doing? Post Brighton win. Maybe you celebrated a bit too hard.
I wish that was the case, to be honest with you, Jack. I really do. Yeah, look, I'm happy post Brighton win. Look, for me, I don't think it changes much. I think we've got tougher games ahead. I think that's where it'd be won or lost. I think it's already lost with fixtures gone by that we should have won. But look, we've plenty of things to talk about today, so let's get into it.
Let's get into it. I'm going to start with you, Jorri. And the first question is probably one that plenty of people are kind of thinking about because it is on the thumbnail at the moment in time. And it is kind of about this European hunt that we are in. After Spurs' win against Brighton, our top four push is still alive, but we still have some tough games coming up against Newcastle, Man United, and Liverpool. If Spurs end up dipping out of the top four race, we would be competing for the Europa League and the Conference League places. Would you be happy to see Spurs play in Europe, Jorri, no matter what next season? Or do you think maybe a European campaign in the Conference League or the Europa League could hamper our campaign under a new manager who's probably trying to rebuild and get, a new system in place?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is that we need to go into a period now where we actually need to first and foremost have a real clear out, and like if we're going to be serious about doing something real with this club and not just pretend to compete and so on, I think we need to extend this period of clear out, which Paratici and Conte have started, but is probably their plan is probably going to be disrupted and changed now. So for me, I do think even Champions League is a bit of a disruption to what needs to be done fundamentally in this club. What does work with Champions League is that we get, it elevates our brand. It makes recruitment easier, it makes revenue better and so on. And as much as I've criticized Levy and stuff like that, I do think there's we do see increased budgets when we have a Champions League ahead of us,
Full stadiums.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm not pretending that we won't have a little bit more money to spend once we're in the Champions League. But I do think that we've got no hope in hell of doing anything for real there. I mean, I don't know how many saw the game yesterday, Man City and Bayern. Like that kind of football where we're not like, what you want to talk about being out of your league. That's definitely, with all due respect to our best performances this season, we're just not even close to that kind of football.
But that's the caliber of football people wish was in our stadium. If they're going to be paying the prices and if it is going to be this grandiose stadium, you would think it would have, to a degree, some version of a champagne football, right, Jorri?
Yeah, or at least some kind of version that can disrupt that or something, but something that is the same caliber.
Sure.
If I use an analogy of guns, it can be a shotgun, it can be a rifle, it can be, but it needs to be a heavy hitter either way. So I think you saw that so brilliantly yesterday. So yeah, for me, I mean, of course, I do enjoy the games and all of that, but I like it. It also annoys me a little bit at this point, because I do feel everything that gives the appearance of progression is a little bit of a fool's goal, because there's fundamental stuff that we need to work on. If we can do it side by side, fine. So far, we've shown that we can do it, in my view. So yeah.
For me, I feel like it's a torn thing where the European campaigns, because for the manager, if you're in a Europa League campaign and a Conference League campaign, I could imagine that you're just fresh into Spurs. It's a messy job to be taking in the first place. You want to be able to have some sense of stability those Thursday nights and those repetitive Thursday nights and wherever you might be headed. I mean, you're lucky if you can maybe be headed to Belgium and like Austria as far as that, if that's where you need to go, but that's if you're lucky, right? And it could be where it ends up being a bit of a hindrance to what you're trying to instill, because let's say we don't have maybe the most successful of summers, and the manager still maybe has to tweak some things and have to be able to put out a decent sort of functioning side that knows how to use his system, knows his style of play. Those Thursday games can, at least to some managers, might get in the way, right? And they might not see them as sort of very important. But then again, we have a young and kind of vibrant sort of squad that I think has been left over probably after, if Parachichi were to go, that's another subject. But we do have a lot of young players that probably could benefit from maybe those kind of European games. I look at guys like Jed Spence. If he weren't to be sent out on loan again, probably those sort of competitions he'd do well in. We think of guys like Brian Hill again would probably do well in those sort of competitions and would benefit from those type of games and everything. But then again, like I said, the manager who wants to come in and wants to probably be successful in the Premier League, and we do know at this football club, like Champions League and finishing inside the top four is basically your utmost priority, at least given to you by the ownership from what we kind of can seem to tell. So if you have those Thursday games as a manager, you might feel like that's going to get in the way of your Premier League campaign. And we've seen a lot of teams this season sort of punch above their weight, I feel like, because they only have one game a week. You look at Newcastle, you look at Brighton, you look at Aston Villa, right, this season. I mean, the moment Unai Emery took over, all of a sudden they're like pushing for a European spot, which is kind of ridiculous because he's only had one game every single week to work with. So he's able to drill down into his team what he wants, and he can kind of basically just put out a pretty decent, formidable side that at least knows what they're doing each and every week. Fulham as well, right, with Marco Silva before the big red card controversy and everything. They were punching above their weight for quite some time. And then Brentford with Thomas Frank is a great example as well, as a guy who only has to play really one game a week usually. And so these sort of things, like with the midweek sort of fixtures, they do end up getting really congested. And I think managers do benefit from that sort of week break. We knew Conte benefited from it, but at the same time, if we want to keep a lot of our sort of younger players, and if we don't want to have this big loan problem again, we have to think about that too, because we would have to send out, I think, a lot of players on loan if we were only playing one game a week as well. But I don't know, Dave or Jorri, come back in.
Yeah.
No, Dave, you go.
Hopefully I make sense. Hopefully I'm not waffling here today. But look, where I'm at with it, I actually think where we finish sort of dictates the direction we go in. I think if we finish in top four, I think it leaves the door open for a Poch, an Nagelsmann, a Luis Enrique. I think if you finish in Europa League or Conference League, I think then, it probably closes the door on them three, and you're more looking at a Company, a Nagelsmann, someone like a Brendan Rodgers. I think, like you're saying there, Jack, if you finish in Europa League or a Conference League, then you go down the route of keeping a lot of the youngsters around, playing them in them sort of games, give them the experience, a bit of a pathway, and also giving us a chance, manager a chance now to see what they can do in a competitive environment in and around Tottenham Hotspur, and then maybe beef out the rest of your squad and keep them fit for the Premier League. A bit sort of like what Arsenal have done with the Europa League and Premier League campaign this year. However, if you get Champions League, you will have to loan out the likes of a Jed Spence, a Gill, and stuff like that again, because it's just a step up in class for them, and we need to fill out our squad. If we want to compete on all four fronts like the owners want us to do, we have to fill that squad out with class. And if that includes the Champions League, then unfortunately a lot of them youngsters have to go. So I do think top 4 probably has a bearing on where we finish and what direction and what manager comes in. But I also think Harry Kane as well. I know people are sick of hearing me talking about this, but I think it's important to highlight this, because I think any manager now will be waiting to see what the Harry Kane situation is, in my opinion. I think when you look at it, I think they'll want to know whether their vision and their plan includes someone like Harry Kane or is without it, because you've got to remember, you've got the best striker in world football. You take his equalisers and goals out of the team this year, that puts us down, I think, 4 or 5 points above relegation, which puts us in a relegation battle. I think Harry Kane has accumulated 22, 23 points for Tottenham with just equalisers or winners alone this season. And, you know, when you take them goals out of the team, it's a massive void to fill. Putting the ball in the back of the net is the hardest thing to do in football. And it creates a massive headache. If you don't have Harry Kane, all of a sudden you're looking at trying to keep balls out, but also score goals. So I think, you know, but then again, I also think top 4 comes hand in hand with maybe Harry Kane signing. So we have to wait and see.
What do you think, Jorri? Would a certain managers?
No, I think Dave's probably right about that. I would just say, like, as you were talking about the Fulhams and the Brentfords and so on, how they've been creeping up, and I would say to that kind of also gives us alludes to what kind of a team we are, and we are actually kind of a mid-table team. I would actually say, because you were talking about it, Dave, I would say that we have a top of the league forward squad and mid-league mid-table in the middle, and bottom of the league at the back, you know, and that includes the goalkeeper, you know. As I know it sounds incredibly simplistic, but it actually kind of turns out that way, you know, and you add that up and you actually get us slightly above what we should be, and that's down to Kane progressing once again, you know, becoming even better this season, I think, even with Son having his struggles. But, you know, even as little as Sonny has scored, you know, you can't really take away, like, there's an unquantified element, which is him being marked out, creating a space for both Kane and Perisic and so on, you know. So yeah, in general, I think we do have this top level, you know, going forward, kind of in the middle, in the middle of the park. I'm actually kind of fairly content with what we have there, and I do think now, actually, you know, it becomes a question exactly. If we get top 4, the question becomes how we're going to see out. And let's say that Harry Kane entertains the idea of staying on, you know, or Levy, which I'm fearful will probably be the case, is that Levy will block any move this summer. And because I do think Kane wants to go to United already. And I think Levy will probably behave like he behaved with Eriksen and like he behaved with Kane in regards to Man City, and which is not a good thing. Nobody should think it's a good thing. We won't get a great Harry Kane till maybe the last part of the season where he's in the shop window again, you know. But so if Kane wants to go, we need to let him go in a orderly and good respectful manner. I mean, come on, how much can one guy do for a club, you know? So, but yeah, I do think, like, now we are actually in a situation where we have a squad of a lot of nobodies or useless guys, you know, and just in general, even the semi-good ones, we kind of need to create a project where we clear out these guys and make room for the youngsters coming in now, you know, and not even maybe that much youngsters, but, you know, is there a future for Brian Gill? Is there a future for these, you know, quite good, you know, Udoji? He needs his time, and you know, I'm sure he's not gonna just go from being the best guy in Serie A to just like
Yeah,
maybe
he'll have an
it
adjustment
could
period.
happen, but we shouldn't work with a plan like that. We should assume that he needs some time to adjust to the hardest league in the world, and so on. That's what
Would
I
a guy like him, though, benefit, just quickly, Jorri, would a guy like him benefit from playing once a week, or would a guy like him benefit from playing as many games as possible?
So back to what you were saying, Jack, is like I actually think that these youngsters would benefit a lot from these minor Europa competitions, and I do think that if we clear out and work on the culture and get the staff out as well who are part of that problem, and create a mind space for these youngsters to, we could go ahead and win something, and that's the most important. So for me, these competitions are actually important to change the non-winning culture of this club,
Right.
But I don't think they're important in terms of the starting 11 right now, because they've shown so many times all they're gonna do is
They don't like it.
completely embarrass us, in these competitions. Even though like on paper they should be able to win one of those competitions, that they're not going to do that. They don't have the fortitude or the commitment to do that for whatever. I mean, not for whatever, because of the culture. So let's work on the culture. Let's, unless Kane hangs around, which I think is a mistake by Kane, but a mistake that we will benefit from in one sense. Actually, I do think now, David, that it might be a little bit detrimental to this progression. It's going to hold the progression. If Kane hangs around, we just need to build something around Kane at that moment right away, and that's going to put the youngsters a little bit on hold again.
The outlier, I would just say quickly to all of this, is actually Arsenal, because Arsenal are the title, they've maintained a title challenge this whole time, and they've only just been knocked out of the Europa League. So that's also maybe a bit of an outlier to what I've just, tried to make the case for with
and
all
they
these other
actually
managers.
were the outlier, last year as well. It was only just at the last, increment that they kind of lost out the fourth spot.
But then they were in the opposite camp last season. But
in terms of in terms of the European campaign, they went out right away, and like I was gonna say. So it is opposite. Sorry, Jack, but they used that one game a week to basically secure fourth place, which they then didn't do because of we know that,
But then this is where I think the balance is, Jorri. It's right, because Arteta clearly benefited from that one game a week. Like, he was able to build like a style of play, build like a philosophy with that one game a week. But then when you look at it this season, maybe a lot of those young players who were there at Arsenal benefited from those Europa League games, benefited from just playing week in, week out, gaining that confidence of playing consistently. So this is what I mean, where the balance lies, where it's like the next manager that comes in, there are a lot of managers that you might just kiss goodbye if we don't get Champions League, like Nagelsmann, Enrique, perhaps Pochettino as well.
I don't
Also,
think
Harry
they're
Kane,
in
like
the
you brought up,
fray
you might kiss
anyway.
goodbye.
Sorry, guys. I don't think. I only think the only kind of elite or next to elite level manager we're looking at, or top European manager, is Potts. I think he's the only one that would entertain the idea of coming to Tottenham at this point. We're like toxic at this moment. I think every manager, every agent out there who has an A-lister, they're saying stay away. Even if you love Tottenham, we'll revisit next summer or the summer after that. Don't go
even
now.
If you had a Klinsmann jersey, just stay away.
And I think that's definitely something important that we have to realize. And look, it's also something that I've highlighted for quite some time, that the perception you're going to be left with after sacking someone like a Pochettino for what he done for the club. Then you go and sack a Jose Mourinho or Conte, who, regardless of, whether it worked at Tottenham or not, they're elite level managers who have won nearly everywhere they've been. And if you're a manager who's on the rise, you look at Tottenham, especially if we don't get top four. You say it's a club in regression, a lot of mess. The whole system is clogged up with staff, players, everything else. There is no sort of direction. So it's kind of like you don't want to stake your job on someone like Tottenham, because if you get that wrong, I've seen it many times where all of a sudden that manager's career is on a downward trajectory and they never reach them heights again. And if you're an elite level manager, you ain't going there, because you've seen with Jose and Conte, you ain't going to get the players you need. So you're not going to go there. So, that's why I always say this next managerial appointment has to be right. And we have to sort of go along the lines of what this guy wants to do. But going back to where we were talking about the youngsters with the Europa League and stuff like that, if we do get Europa League or Conference League, it is absolutely crucial that we don't have a Davinson Sanchez, a Davies, and people like that continuing to play in this competition. And I don't want to hear anybody in the comments tell me, Dave, leave it off with these guys. They're good. The reality is they've been a part of all the upsets that we've suffered in FA Cup, League Cup, Europa League.
The reason
Europa
we've
Conference
lost
League.
those competitions.
And they've played in nearly every single one of them. So it's important that we get rid of these guys. We don't suffer the same results or the humiliation. You put youngsters out there. You look at Arsenal, Saka, Smith Rowe, people like that who've developed from playing in these competitions over the last few years. They play there, then all of a sudden they get some Premier League appearances off the bench. They take them, all of a sudden, look what it can do for a football club. So if we end up having to go down that route, which I want European football at all costs, I can't bear Tottenham not being in Europe. I've been a fan where Tottenham haven't been in Europe, and trust me, it's boring and not nice. So I do want to be in Europe regardless, but it is important we don't make the same errors. We can't keep persisting with guys that we know are going to give us the same results. So it is important that we clear them out and we do use it to give the likes of the youths and youngsters good enough or a chance. And that way it also shows them a pathway. So any top youngsters around the world will go think, do you know what? I will go to Tottenham because there's a pathway. There's a pathway for you to get some first team experience. That'll up the caliber in your academy and everything else.
That's exactly it.
You
We
go down
can't
there
attract the A-listers now, so we should be attracting the top talent instead. We should exactly rebrand and have a image of being the perfect nurturing club now, So, yeah.
I think you're spot on, Jorri, when you did say that managers do kind of, Dave has said this before too, that managers speak to each other. They all kind of, when they see that one manager ends up having a big fallout, a big breakup with a club, they might ask why. They might lean into maybe what were the deeper reasons. And what ends up happening is that if there's clearly a trend, which there is at Spurs, they will look at that as do I really want to get that on my resume? Do I really want to get my hands dirty in that type of situation? Because you have to be hungry. And this is what I mean. There's kind of a good thing and a bad thing with this is that it seems like we've missed our chance and we've missed our opportunities with the real elite top class managers that do step in and can just take a job and be able to lead you to the greatest of titles and the greatest of success. But we might be in a situation right now where we just need a manager who is sort of naive enough and also hungry enough and ambitious enough to take on what is a messy project, I think. And that also might mean some Europa Conference League games and, some Europa League games. It's not going to be maybe a manager that, let's say, it's just going to be someone, like I said, who wants to get their hands dirty. And that's what's also going to be part of the interview process, right? Are you willing to do this?
Yeah, Jack, I think, to be honest, a big part of the problem also is that these managers, these football professionals that work in the game and are talking together, it doesn't matter whether it's Mourinho style, Poch style, Conte style, whatever. What they're witnessing is that these guys, they build something, they have a progression in their own brand. And you see a club that reacts to that as if they don't understand it, as if they don't see what these guys are doing, or that they're putting up a pretense or whatever. Either way, it becomes that, there's no substance behind it, either because the board is too ignorant of what the managers are doing, or it's a little bit of a fan play game that we can go into. We've many times talked about that, what Levy is doing and so on, and I don't want to make this about that. I'm just saying, when you see that as a professional, I'm a film professional, and that's also maybe a high tier game, and you
Yeah.
have levels of people and stuff. And all the time you see people that are basically a little bit bullshit artists, or you see producers that are close to money but have no business being there and stuff like. And then you just know, okay, that's what you're dealing with. Okay, so then you
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
work around them in that manner, so you don't go to that kind of a producer if you're trying to lift your masterpiece now as a director or something like that. The same if you're looking for an appointment as a coach for really showing your stuff, then you don't go to Tottenham at this point. If you're a guy that's shown it all anytime and you just want a fat paycheck, then you can go to Tottenham and get like maybe the two last guys did, get it and go away without being too hurt, especially like Mourinho going and doing what he did in Roma. And we know Conte is going to do the same, if not even to a higher degree, So these guys, they don't have to worry. But a Nagelsmann, for example, who's just had a shock to his career now, this would be a really, really bad move for him, The only kind of guy I see that might take it, and it might not be the worst, is like a Potter, because Potter has really hurt his brand with Chelsea, and also we know how fond of Chelsea managers Levy is, so you never know.
I think Nagelsmann actually probably.
I don't want him personally, but I mean, I know what we need. For me, I'm absolutely convinced, even though I don't want Potts back under Levy, if there's any one guy in the world I'm convinced that can fix this club, culture, staffing, players, recruitment, everything, it's Potts. If Potts got the keys to the club, he would once again perform miracles. But I'm not sure that that's what's going to happen if he comes in. Actually, I'm kind of sure that the opposite. He will be even more restrained by Levy.
Well, apparently Donna Cullen is the one up there apparently stopping a Potts return. So be very interesting to see what happens. There. But look, well, I wonder if this guy Scott Munn.
Yeah, speaking of keys to the club.
Speaking
of keys to the club, everybody, there's a certain Scott Munn that potentially has been given the keys to the club here. And we kind of thought maybe with this question here, everybody, we'd just ask you, what are some of the first things, and please, everybody, get in the comments down below as well, that you want Scott Munn maybe to sort out when he arrives? Jorri, going to come straight back at you here. What's maybe the first thing that you can think of that Scott Munn could probably realistically kind of take on?
First of all, I just want to say, with this club, why can't we just have one signing, one appointment that's like a sure thing, where we don't have to fucking read up on it and just, shoehole it in and stuff like that? Scott Munn, who's that? I've never heard of. Nobody's ever heard of him, But anyway, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he is this amazing guy that the club statements kind of allude to. All right, fine. The first thing I would definitely it would be simultaneously. It's starting and finishing a really powerful scouting network for the club, and the clear out once again. And for me, the clear out has to be staffing as well. I could maybe say I could put both of these things on. Maybe the most important thing he could do for me is to make a real wall between the business dealings and the football. If no crossover anymore, it's separate things. There's only a transfer of budget from the business dealings into the football, and that's the extent of the.
Does he do that with like a personality? Does he do that by beefing up like the team around him? How does he do that by creating that wall?
I mean, for me also, it's like when clubs are run in a holistic and collaborative vision, you don't need all this overhead. For me, it's exactly the corporate nature. We're getting a lot of with too many peoples in all kinds of positions, you know, and it's, you know, when you're a corporate guy like Levy is, I mean, it doesn't matter when you're a carpenter. A lot of problems look like nails. That's just how it goes, you know. That's the nature. That's what you know about. And this is the problem with Levy, you know. And I'm fearful that Scott Munn is exactly, you know, the nail to Levy's hammer, you know. And if that's the case, then we're in trouble once again, you know, because we've known for a long time that we need a screw, not a nail, you know. So but I would say, like, I really don't know anything about him. I do see, of course, once again, there is a corporate element, which is the Asian market. Like Scott Munn's connection to Australia and Asia is, of course, has something to do with revenue.
In the City Group, which
Levy.
is a very
Exactly,
successful sports franchising, you know,
yeah.
kind of
And
operation.
it's gonna drive me crazy if we're now gonna be the main venue for the next Rugby World Cup or something. Like, then it's like, come on, like we're such a and we're such a footnote to the whole, you know, corporate thing, you know. But so yeah, I would say, but in terms of football, I would say the recruitment and the clear out is almost, or the scouting and the clear out is something that should happen almost at the same moment. And one action that would maybe help that along would be to basically make a firewall between the corporate and the football side.
I'd love that suggestion. I didn't even think of that suggestion because I feel like I didn't even know how to really, because that was on my mind, right? Was how does he sort of like take control, like, and not fall
Exactly,
into the
just
same
owns the
trap
whole
that
thing.
previous
Exactly,
ones
yeah.
do? And like the way you've worded it there, creating that wall between the business, which is already being run quite competently. But what
Yeah.
ends up happening is, like you said, the business bleeds into the football operations when it doesn't need to. And then this is what Scott Munn needs to practically, honestly, Drew, I really like that answer, because what I think it needs, that's probably the first thing what needs to need to be thought of. It's not like it could be done in one day, but it's sort of the thing that needs to be always thought of, is because that's been the biggest problem that most people identify with Spurs, is the fact that the business operations seem to blend and coexist with the football operations in kind of an unhealthy manner. And if he's able to go into it first day and just think about it that way, like, let's create a divide here where the business operations still function and still thrive at the way that they do, but we need to create, like you said, that firewall. I really like that suggestion. But
I mean, the problem is, like, in many cases, good business is detrimental to good football, and good football is detrimental to good business. So we need to have two kings there, and they simply agree on, this is the revenue that, oh, this is the budget that goes over there, and you just do your thing, you know. That's what I think. Like, if I give Levy the benefit of the doubt and say there's no malice, there's no kind of manipulative side to him or whatever, this is always going to be a factor. Levy has a lot of good business ideas, and usually by doing good football means a losing business from the recruitment standpoint and so on. Of course, we know once you get into winning, then that's the best business model of them all. I mean, Real Madrid has proven that again and again. But that's, of course, a very high risk, high reward game to play, you know. But we should have the balls to do it, because we have a base that's secure enough, which is the business side of things, you know. We have a revenue base that's not going to be knocked off by 1, 2, 3, 4 bad campaigns. We can sustain that and get back into it, you know. And that, so it's kind of like when you play poker and whatever, you know. Once you have that, you know, build up your chips, you know, that's when you need to really
start
go
using
for
them,
it.
start
Otherwise,
bullying.
yeah. You need to be aggressive then. Otherwise, you'll just let the other guys into the game again, you know. So, and
knew
that's
you'd be
what
good for this
Levy
question.
he's really bad at that, you know. He does not have an aggressive temperament at all when it comes to money matters, you know. So, yeah.
What do you think, Dave? And honestly, I love the answer from Jorri.
Yeah, no, look, Jorri raises a number of interesting points, and I'm a bit dubious on this appointment, right? I think, look, this appointment obviously transpired from the internal view of the club that we were told when they answered the supporters trust and released the financial statements, etc. And when you look at it, right, fans have asked Daniel Levy to step away from the footballing side of of things, and you look at Paratici coming in, it happened to a certain extent, but then we still seen the signings of someone like Jed Spence, for instance, Danjuma, which we were told were club signings.
Richarlison was even Levy's feelings there.
Yeah, we tried to take advantage of Everton's
exactly.
core finances. We didn't exactly take advantage of it, did we?
No.
We paid full whack, if not some would, like Shawnee would argue, over the top. So that wasn't taking advantage of anything. But then you look at it and he brings in this guy, Scott Munn. So it is him effectively distancing himself further from the football side of things. However,
make it look it that way.
Yeah, I hope it's not a shield that Levy is creating.
For
that
sure, you mean.
All accountability from the football inside of things, what we see on the pitch in terms of recruitment, etc. I just hope that it's not a shield that buffers him from that, to be honest with you. But look, like I said, however, I am dubious on this because I do hope us fans are not misreading this situation. And what I mean by that is I hope that this is football focused and not for the wider sporting infrastructure that comes with Tottenham, like the karting, the F1, the rugby, the NFL, the boxing. Like when you look at the experience of Scott Munn in the Olympics committee, so he's in there with sports, he's been in there with the rugby, which we have a connection with, stuff like that. So that sort of does make me a bit dubious, to be honest with you. Another thing, was he brought in to oversee the dealings of Paratici? When I read the statement, it was kind of, there was a part in it, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but there was a part in it where it was kind of like, part of it makes me think, with Paratici being caught up with the financial stuff at Juve, is this guy sort of brought in just to oversee that, to make sure none of that sort of happens at Tottenham Hotspur? Let's wait and see. Is it like a sort of a protection mechanism? Then also, the club mentioned about being competitive. Now, for me, does that mean on the pitch or does that mean financially? And what I mean by that, by financially, is when you look at Scott Munn's experience in sporting organisations, especially that City group, could Spurs be looking to move into something like that City group, where you look at Man City group, they own the J League team that Postecoglou managed, Yokohama Marinos. They own New York Red. They own a team in New York. They own a team in Australia. They've sort of got teams all around the world. And I wonder, have Tottenham brought this guy in a view of using his experience, his connections within these organizations to create that Foreign group? That is a legitimate question. I think.
I think that's a good point.
Well, because it's successful and it's proven to be very successful for the likes of Red Bull. It's proven to be very successful with the likes of the City Group, and so you wouldn't doubt why they wouldn't be interested in that.
I would then add on to that, Dave. I would think if that's the case, then I would think that it's probably pretty likely that we're going to get at least a minority stakeholder from the Middle East, like they've been talking about, because that, like, I don't think Levy and Enoch has the appetite for that kind of extension without having that backing, and to be honest, if that's what they're thinking and trying to do, I have nothing against it, as long as we then start creating these firewalls. Again, like, as long as it doesn't dilute and take attention and resources and so on from the club. We're, first of all, a football club. I'm really, it gets on my nerves listening to all of these fans that get some kind of pride and rise out of the corporate. Like, it doesn't matter. Yes, we need to build the revenue base. That is a part of a club that wants to do anything and all of that. But that's not like, we're almost, some of the fans are almost drooling over Levy's business dealings, like Man City fans are drooling over Haaland goal or De Bruyne assist. You know, have we completely lost track of what it is we're supposed to be communal about? I feel like that, and you can, of course, we've gone through unprecedented times in general, but I think that, because it's so easy to speculate to the wider corporate things of things. For me, it's simple. If our board is serious, we will see real difficult, painful steps being taken this summer, because every model that you put out there is an opportunity to progress or do something better. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We have our preferences, as we do with managers and players and stuff like that. But as all I ask for, at least, is that you have you as the board have a vision, and you now are clear in your actions, so it's plain for all of us to see that you're following your own vision, at least, in terms of football. So I might then not agree with it, but at least then there's some real heart behind it, I feel.
You did make
I said, like I said on via Tottenham TV, I said to my own shame, like I was always laughing and not seeing it with Arsenal. But it turned out that what I thought was excuses at the time had real substance in it. And that's something similar we need to see from our club. We need to see a club take a stance and basically not care too much what the fans think about it, and follow their vision. So I might get furious down the road, but at least I would have in the back of my head, yeah, this is what they want to do. I don't agree with it, but at least they're following that. I haven't seen anything. I think all of the fans can agree on. They're all over the place in terms of direction and vision and so on. So
and look, I hope this Scott Munn guy can bring that, because I don't want him to come in and be another name that's attached himself to the problem. I think I speak for every Spurs fan, where we want this guy to be different. There's many fans out there like me who, look, you don't drink, you don't go out on the weekends, you don't go anywhere because of your health, your sickness and stuff like that. So you're sort of just stuck inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, all you've got is Tottenham. And there's plenty of fans like that out there. Yeah. And we want this club back. So I do hope that this guy can sort of bring that joy that it brought to people, because, some people, it's the only thing they've got in their life. But if we do go down the route of going down the route of the City Group, where they are looking to get into multiple clubs and stuff like that, they better hope they've got Tottenham on the right track before they go down that road. They better not be, running before they can walk, because that will cause absolute outrage. Now, I have no problem going down that route if the Tottenham is on the right foot, and you can do what sort of Leipzig have done with RB, that team they have in Austria, where they sort of filter in players, young players, bring them over to Germany, which we could do at Tottenham.
I can give you another example, Dave. Sorry to interrupt, because we've been linked to Thomas Frank, and that Thomas Frank is basically, like, Brentford is owned by a Scandinavian, mainly Danish consortium.
Yeah, and they have a crazy network.
And there's Danish clubs behind that. And they have some amazing African recruitment, like scouting and recruitment, And that's where so they've made their own little network without having a Qatar sovereign fund or anything, It's just like local
competency.
Danish businessmen that basically a little Danish consortium. So it's like the whole narrative about it needs to be Man City money and stuff like that. No, it doesn't. It just needs to be really, really, really clever people working on the board level, And if you do that, then there's many options, many models you can go after. But of course, you always need to commit to that, If we're going to go the budget option, then we need to have the best network in Africa, where we deem these players needs to come from, And the Red Bull model is that exactly, but the Red Bull is higher, like it's at a higher cost level than, for example, this Danish network behind Brentford, so.
But that's where your strength can be as a club. And Dave, I know, wants to come in here, and I think this is another great suggestion where I think Scott Munn, this is one of the things he could front. He's not the one, of course, doing the scouting himself or buying the players. Like, he needs to bring in people also for that. He needs to beef up that area around him for those people who can also, because we still need another guy, I think, like a Paratici, who can negotiate these kind of deals and be that deal negotiator, who can, play hardball with people as well. But where our strength can be is, like you said, we can be like the Brentfords, the RB group, the Red Bull group, or even look at the Ajaxes, or even like a Shakhtar Donetsk and like teams like that. They clearly benefit from not outspending clubs, but having this extensive and founded sort of scouting network that allows them to be able to still operate and compete with the best of clubs in the world. Yes, they may fall off a year or two there because, of course, they're kind of embedding new players through after maybe selling some of their best, but they still continue to punch above their weight, and they continue to still operate well within their means, and kind of, let's be honest, kind of do it the way that football was probably always intended to be, kind of like Jorri had said, where it's sort of like you're operating at a clever way. You're not just spending ridiculous amount of money that's like the size of a country's GDP or something like that. You're just playing in kind of an operating at a kind of genius as well as sort of clever way. And it's also just competency at the end of the day too. It's just being able to know what you're doing and having a general idea. And there's nothing wrong with sort of allowing the scouting network to be our foundation, to be our strength. There are a lot of clubs like Ajax as another example as well. That's their strength. That's what they do best, right? And so why can't
Ajax has done it
that?
for decade after decade after decade,
And it will take a long time to get there, but why can't that be our strength? I think that's a decent ideal for Scott Munn to have, is to see that as maybe the future for Spurs. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's just an image. Like, as a father, like I have Jonas, my son is very talented football wise. I don't know if he's gonna get into the professional leagues or whatever. But as a father, I know that if Jonas was to be invited to the Ajax academy, that's jackpot right there. That's as good as it gets. And this is like Ajax, for example, just to extend about the Brentford. All of the Danish super talents have known for generations to get into the Ajax academy is the way to go, and of course the Barcelona is even more difficult, but especially the Ajax academy has been like such a huge thing for Scandinavian football. That's where most of our stars go through, and what do Ajax do with it? They play amazing, progressive, interesting. Like, they're also, developing systems, formations, tactics. They're very on the cutting edge of all of that stuff. United's brilliant manager Ten Hag out of Ajax. And so we can go on and on. So
that can be our superpower, Jorri. That can be our sort of our talent.
And
it doesn't need to be 300 million a summer. We can spend 100 million in a summer, or we can spend 75 million in a summer. We can spend 150 million in a summer. We don't need to be the 200 million a summer clubs if we build that sort of foundation like you just were speaking about, because then you won't be always, competing for league titles and operating at the, the highest elite, but you will be punching, well above your weight, and more in kind of a sustainable kind of manner as well. That's not, directionless.
You look at the likes of Ajax. They rarely spend massive money on massive players because they don't need to. You look at a lot of Pochettino's team, half of that came through Ajax, through that system. You look at Salzburg or Leipzig, they don't spend massive amounts of money because they've got a constant flow coming in. You look at City, they spent massive money, but I think that's going to start, evening itself out a little bit. You look at Foden that's come through. You look at that other guy that's come through. Look at the two guys they sold to Southampton, or the three guys, including Bazunu, stuff like that. They've sort of made 50, 60 million off their academy in the summer. And that's something where Spurs need to get to. That if they are coming through and look, they're not good enough for whatever position, that you need to be able to make money off them and regain some of the money you've invested in their development and stuff like that. But just to get back to, just quickly, my last point on maybe the financial side of Scott Munn, when I look at his extensive experience in Asia, Australia, and stuff like that, I think Jorri's spot on with that market. I think it's a growing market. I think it's a market that everybody's trying to tap into. We've seen the benefits of it through Sonny. Mm-hmm. Sonny's getting old. That's not going to be there forever. I have no doubt Tottenham are trying to get ahead of that by having Scott Munn in here for the Asian, the sort of Asian market and the money, the loyal following that brings with it. I have no doubt they're going to look for that next Asian superstar. If you look what Sonny has brought to the table, you know, I think, and you also look around the world right now with some of them South Koreans that are around the world. It seems to be where that new hotbed is. It used to be Belgium. Now it looks like it's over there. So hopefully we can take the, hopefully we can capitalize on that. But I would like, if you like, clarity on what they mean by competitive. Do they mean financial competitiveness by bringing in Scott Munn to bring all these other things that will help the finances that will then, you know, help on the pitch, but you won't see the benefits of that for probably 5 to 10 years? Or is it sort of to come in and make us competitive on the football pitch straight away? Be interesting to see. In terms of what I think his jobs are, Jack, I've laid out 2 steps that I think are absolutely crucial for this guy. The first one for me is bringing in a manager that plays attractive football. We've seen how important it is to Spurs fans, you know, over the last few years. It's their culture, it's their identity. It's what most Spurs fans have grew up on, whether it's people that grew up on the great push and run team, or whether it's people that grew up on Tottenham during the Poch era. You're used to good, attacking, exciting football that gets you out your seats. And Spurs fans will not trade that for anything. I think that's why you've seen the uproar, you know, that we've seen the last few years, because it's disconnecting. You look at now, there's a massive disconnect between Tottenham and its fans. And that's not only because of the owners, it's because of the appointments in the dugout, it's because of the players on the pitch. So that disconnect there is there on many levels. And I think if Scott Munn wants to stand a chance, I think he's got to get that managerial appointment right. We've seen what he can do if you get it wrong, like with Paratici. You know, it'll alienate you. People won't give you a chance, this, that, and the other. So I think the best thing Scott Munn can do is hiring a manager that plays that sort of football. I then think the second thing he needs, because actually, just quickly, you hire in that manager that does that, right, Jack? You improve, you bring in leadership, which we know we're massively missing. B, he brings in new tactics, new style of play, which ultimately you hope affects performances, which will then affect your results. Once you start getting results, all that noise starts to calm down a little bit, you know. With the manager also brings culture and identity. So I think he's got to get that one right, because that can get fans back on board. But if he really wants to separate himself from the rest, I think the next thing he needs to do is make a statement signing, Jack. I think that's his biggest thing. I know we're saying that's the director of football's job, but right now we don't have one, you know, and we don't know what.
Maybe a director of football could also be a statement signing, right? Bring in some guy from.
I think that.
Well, I would. What I mean by statement signing is, I mean a player. When you look at Tottenham, when's the last real statement signing that Tottenham have made? You know, and I think this could really help someone like Scott Munn, because what it does is it signals a statement of intent. You know, it signals an attacking statement. It freshens things up. I think you'll get a lot of fans that will say, hang on here, this one could be a little bit different. This is not what we're used to. And I think them 2 things alone, the right manager and a statement signing, I think gives Scott Munn a hell of a chance to be able to sort this out in terms of the fans. I think you'll get a lot of fans on side. Where you look at someone like Paratici's first appointment being Nuno, sort of, you know, he never really got off to a fair chance. Fans never really, you know, saw what he was trying to do because of that. So I think these 2 things are very important with Scott Munn. If it is someone like James Maddison, for instance, right, I think, you know, that, of course, excite many fans. It'll shout that we're looking to play attacking football. It would scream to me that you're looking at a certain type of manager then, maybe a Poch that plays the 4-2-3-1, Postecoglou, maybe a Brendan Rodgers who has history with Maddison at Leicester. I think that would probably signal what way we start to go. But I just think it'll give the whole club maybe a a freshen up, a renewed energy. I also think it might portray Spurs a little bit differently in the media if you start off with the right manager and a signing of intent. Because I think the third one, I think obviously will be the director of football. Do we continue with someone like Paratici, who will forever have that hanging over his head? And, regardless whether he wins the appeal or not, there's still going to be further to come out of that. The investigations and that are not over. Court cases still have to be heard. And do Spurs want to be embroiled in that, or do you get rid of that and bring in a guy that, has vast experience of knowledge all across the world, knows the best young sort of players to go and get and bring in here? I think that would be his third thing. But I think the first two are the most important for this guy. Get them right, he'll be given a chance by fans and everybody. Get it wrong, he'll just be added to the list and next out the door.
Wow, a lot of good points there. Any final points on Scott Munn for you, Jorri?
I have a question, Dave. Sorry, Jack.
No, go ahead.
So you mean like statement signing after we get the managerial appointment? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the manager has to come first. I think you have to know what sort of direction you're going in. Like, for instance, no point in bringing in someone like a James Maddison and then bringing in someone like a Conte or a Jose Mourinho of that ilk, because it doesn't fit in. I think, fans will be like, what the fuck? It's just more disconnect, manager with a certain system, and you bring in James Maddison. So I think the manager is important. And then I think the statement signing is also important. I think that will give him a good chance at Tottenham.
Yeah. All right.
Any other points that you wanted to make on Scott Munn, Jorri, by chance?
No, I mean, I agree with Dave here. I mean, especially after he clarified that, I would say it would bring feel good to the club and a lot of fans back up for it as such. But I do fear it would be premature. I do think that we need to do more of the fundamental building, like a new sporting director as well, like the academy and the scouting and stuff like that. But I do not agree that, yes, when the time is right, as one of the first signings, I would love to see absolute, like a flag in the sand, like this is who we are, this is where we're going. Also the opportunity, like I do think that let's say a sale of Kane would very much, like you would see a little bit of a cultural meltdown in our club if we didn't follow that up with something like that, so
well, any final points there, Jorri and Dave, before we end off this therapy session?
No, I was just wanted to revisit just the academy point as well, because once again, as a father of a talented kid, I can tell you, if Spurs had an academy that had some kind of a reputation in the world, we would, parents would be lining up to feed us their kids, because it's London, it's English, for example. You don't need to learn Dutch and so on, and you it's all of the pluses that comes along with one of the greatest cities in the world, which is London, and the club facilities, we've heard enough about them, so let's use that to our strengths for once. Can you imagine the prospect for a young teenager to come and train in these facilities, and so on, so it's all there for us to kick on with that part of it. And that's definitely something I hope I'll see quickly with Scott Munn, for example, that something gets going in that regard. So me too. Honestly, I think a lot of really good points have been made on the Scott Munn section, especially from yourself and Dave there. You guys really did a great job in that part. But Dave, any final points from yourself today before end off this therapy session?
No, look, I just want to say I actually really enjoyed this conversation. I think, we went off into various topics. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you to you, Jorri, for that. I think anytime we always get talking football, we always have deep, good discussions. So I appreciate that. And I apologize to No, it was an absolute pleasure, Jorri, an
Thank you,
absolute
Jorri.
pleasure, and hopefully we'll see more of you around here, my man. And to everyone else out there who'll be watching, sorry about my relentless coughing throughout the show. Hopefully it hasn't ruined it for you guys.
You powered on, Dave. Honestly, I would
Yes.
say both of everybody who's watched this back. Thank Jorri for coming on and dealing with our
Just
time schedule.
one final look at David, taking one for the team,
Exactly
you need
right.
to fight on no matter what,
That's exactly what I was going to say. Jorri was able to handle our different time changes. He was very considerate of us in that regard. And also Dave has been able to power on today, everybody. So thank both of them in the comments down below. Some real troopers today, and also some great chat, as always, is what you can expect from us over here. But I think we'll leave it there, everybody. Hit that like button, please, on the way out. Get your comments down below. And I think we'll be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs and the fans we trust.
Come on, you Spurs.
Everywhere we go.